This is your WLAK Daily News Roundup for Lake Air, 107.5 FM and 1260 AM in Amory.
Civic Media News. I'm Terry Bell. Here's what Wisconsin needs to know. Wisconsin's U.S. senators are splitting their votes on the foreign aid package to send $95 billion more aid to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. Democrat Tammy Baldwin tells the Journal Sentinel that conditions and safeguards in the package allay her concerns about sending weapons to Israel. Ron Johnson says he voted against it for a lack of meaningful reforms on the U.S. southern border. Wisconsin schools are turning to restraints and seclusion less often. The Department of Public Instruction says cases were down about 8% last school year. Tim Pirenboom is a DPI psychologist.
It's only supposed to be used as a last resort when the student's behavior presents a clear, present, imminent risk to physical safety.
Pirenboom says it happens most with elementary schoolers with disabilities.
Frequent use of seclusion restraint is usually a symptom of larger, more systemic issues, whether that's staffing shortages or lack of proper training for staff members who work with our highest needs students.
Pirenboom says most schools report no cases of using seclusion or restraint. Officials from the village of Alloway are urging state officials to close the Green Bay State Prison. They came to Madison yesterday to make their case. State Representative David Steffen points out the Green Bay Prison is 126 years old and overcrowded. Local officials say the prison is a danger to the safety of the surrounding community. The University of Wisconsin's flagship campus in Madison is slipping in the global and national rankings. The Wall Street Journal ranks it 79th. Internationally, UW-Madison has fallen to as low as 102nd in one ranking. Authors of the UW's internal studies say the UW-Madison gets fewer federal research grants. People who need a few $100 in a hurry can take out loans on smartphone apps, but consumer advocates warn of steep hidden costs. Lucia Constantine is with the Center for Responsible Lending.
They are trapping consumers in a cycle of borrowing that is similar to that of a payday loan.
A bipartisan bill to curb predatory lending in Wisconsin stalled in the last session of the state legislature. Saturday is Drug Take-Back Day in Wisconsin. Law enforcement leaders and health officials are trying to raise awareness about opioids. People can drop off their unused medications at 135 places around the state. I'm Terry Bell, Civic Media News. Now here's what you need to know closer to home.
For WLAK News, I'm James Kelly. Northland College has once again delayed its self-imposed deadline on whether the school will remain open or not. Officials were expected to make the decision on Tuesday night after receiving a new proposal to restructure its academic programs and even eliminate some to cover its budget deficiencies. The school announced that it needed $12 million to stay open in March, but had raised only about $1.5 million prior to their first deadline. A new decision deadline has been set for the end of next week. The old Solemn Hotel building in Cloquet is getting a renovation as the city looks to add to its housing supply. According to a Northern News Now report, the historic building was condemned last year due to safety concerns involving asbestos, mold, and the materials the building was made out of. Officials plan to convert the old hotel into an apartment building with 18 units after essentially tearing it down to its bare bones. The project is estimated to cost around $4 million, but officials expect it to have a positive community impact. A communication mistake led a group of union members outside the Eris Apartments last week to protest the wrong company. According to a Northern News Now report, the North Central States Regional Council of Carpenters Union protested outside the apartment project, claiming the contractor Ultimate Drywall was underpaying its employees. This week, however, the union acknowledged that Ultimate Drywall was never actually contracted for the project, despite receiving information from on-site workers that they were. A historic train that has resided in Barnum for years is being sent away. According to a Northern News Now report, the Duluth and Northeastern 280 number 27 has been in Carleton County since 1956. As its condition began to deteriorate, officials decided to give the steam engine away to anybody who could supply the transportation to move it and fix it up. The Wisconsin Great Northern Railroad plans to take the engine after they inspect it to ensure it can be fixed up and added to their fleet, which runs historic train rides in Trago. A highway crash involving a St. Louis County patrol car ended in the arrest of the driver who caused the crash. According to the St. Louis County Sheriff's Office, one of their deputies had pulled over and parked at a crash scene on Highway 169 near Campground Road on Monday when another car crashed into the deputy's patrol car. The driver of the car was arrested and charged with DWI, and a search of the car allegedly resulted in the discovery of illegal drugs. The deputy was not seriously injured in the crash. Superior businesses and residents took to the streets on Monday for Earth Day cleanup events. According to a Northern News Now report, some businesses and organizations have even adopted some of the public green spaces in the city, like parks, trails, and boat launches, and got to cleaning those spaces with the help of volunteers. Some popular parks like Oaks Park and Heritage Parks got cleanups, and a skate ramp was even repainted. Organizers hope they can keep the positive momentum going throughout the week. The Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources is reminding residents that general inland fishing season opens next weekend. According to a press release, there are some new fishing regulations in effect, like bag and length limit changes in a number of counties, including Eau Claire, Chippewa, Dunn, Rusk, St. Croix, Pierce, and Polk. The full regulations can be found on the DNR website. Officials are also asking anglers to minimize the spread of aquatic invasive species and prevent the spread of fish disease. Fire officials are reminding Northwest Wisconsin residents that we're in the midst of a busy wildfire season. According to Wisconsin DNR Forestry Division officials, fire crews have been occupied with more grass fires than usual after a winter that didn't see much snowfall. They say over the past week there were nearly 100 wildfires across the state that burned about 100 acres. Grass fires are especially dangerous as the dry vegetation and high winds create a perfect storm for the fire to spread quickly. And that's what you need to know. For WLAK News, I'm James Kelly.
The Brewers lose again to the Pirates. Hi, I'm Mike Clemens with sports. Their crew could not get on base, losing 2-1 in Pittsburgh. Pat Murphy was pleased by the debut of right-hander Tobias Myers, even though the first batter he faced, Andrew McCutchen, hit a home run.
I think sometimes getting punched early is probably a good thing, to be quite honest with you. I think that said it all, what he did the next 15 outs.
NBA, the Bucks lost at home to the Pacers, 125-108. Milwaukee pulled to within 4 points, then fell behind by 20 in the final period. Chris Middleton.
Siakam made some tough plays. Turner hit some shots. But I think for the most part, their pace after our missed shots just, killed us tonight.
On Sunday, the Bucks dominated Indiana. What was the difference? Doc Rivers.
They said we couldn't play defense. We did that in the first game. They said they couldn't play defense. They did that in the second game. I thought it was more our offense versus their defense than the other way. And I thought that bled over to the defensive end. So I thought it was more our offense tonight.
Pacers guard Tyrese Halliburton is a native of Oshkosh, but says his family was mistreated in Milwaukee.
This has been my little brother in the stands the other day was called the N-word, and so it was important for us as a family to just address that, and that was important for us to talk about because that just didn't sit right with anybody in our in our family.
That's the Pacers' Tyrese Halliburton with sports. I'm Mike Clemens.
On your entertainment beat, I'm Pete Schwaba. 26 years later, Jerry Seinfeld has mixed feelings about the way his sitcom ended. The 69-year-old comedian does not believe in regret, but told People.com that thinking about it still causes mixed emotions. The show ended with Jerry, Kramer, George, and Elaine all in jail for violating a Good Samaritan law in a small town. Seinfeld says the topic came up when he was talking with fellow Seinfeld creator Larry David about the fact that Seinfeld is never mentioned when people discuss great TV finales. Seinfeld lists Bob Newhart, Mary Tyler Moore, and Mad Men as great finales, adding that he feels Mad Men was the best ever. Co-creator David also says he has some issues with the way the show ended. Seinfeld admits to being influenced by network producers at the time who thought since the characters were selfish on the show that the ending should be consistent with that. The ending might not be perfect, but at least they never jumped a shark. Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction celebrated its 30th anniversary last weekend in Hollywood. Gathering for the celebration were cast members Samuel L. Jackson, Uma Thurman, Harvey Keitel, and John Travolta. The event was held at Mann's Chinese Theater on Hollywood Boulevard and was part of the TMC Classic Film Festival. The film was released in 1994 and was the follow-up to Tarantino's first film, Reservoir Dogs. Anne Hathaway recently talked about making out with several different actors in front of casting directors to see if there was chemistry. Hathaway said she went along with the antiquated practice in the early 2000s because she didn't want to be considered difficult. She said it was really awkward when the producers made it seem like she should be excited to make out with so many different guys in front of them. Hathaway produced and stars in the new film The Idea of You, which will be released May 2nd, and only makes out with people she wants to these days. Director Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon Part 2 debuted in first place on the Netflix Top 10 Most Viewed list. The Green Bay native and Batman vs. Superman director's film scored 21.5 million views since its debut April 19th. But it was actually a weaker opening than his Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, which garnered 24 million views in its opening back in December. Woody Woodpecker and What Jennifer Did came in second and third place, respectively. Not only does Hollywood recycle old ideas in films they've already made, now they're remaking films based on board games. Deadline reports that Sony Pictures has purchased the rights from Hasbro to remake the film Clue, which was originally made in 1985. Hasbro recently made a deal with Margot Robbie's company Lucky Chap to make Monopoly into a movie. Personally, I can't wait to see Catchphrase made into a movie, which I'm guessing will just be family members shouting at each other about when the buzzer went off. For more showbiz fun, tune in to Nightlight with me, Pete Schwaba, weeknights from 7 to 9 p.m. on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Mostly sunny and not windy today. We'll get to 55 this afternoon. The wind east to south at 5 to 10. Tonight down to 36. Tomorrow, sunshine 63. We are watching a system that'll bring some rain and wind by Thursday night. Most of Friday and through the weekend. I'm meteorologist Sean Cable. Outside now, it's 33.
That's your WLAK Daily News Roundup from Civic Media. Subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you find your podcasts. Find more news at lakeair.radio.